This video covers 4 shocking mysteries that all occurred out at sea, from creepy abandoned ghost ships found floating on the water with no trace of the crew, to whole groups of planes that were flying over the ocean all mysteriously disappearing at the same time. These true mysteries might leave you too scared to venture into open waters. While the beauty of the world's oceans are undeniable, they also have a sinister side, as you'll see in this video. And the next time you find yourself taking a casual stroll along the beach, take a look over the water, out onto the horizon. And remember these stories. Somewhere out there, in that vast expanse of emptiness, lie the answers we seek. Anyway, let's dive into the first story. In 1872, the maritime world was gripped by one of its most enduring and perplexing mysteries, the disappearance of the Mary Celeste. On November 7, 1872, a 282-ton brigantine known as the Mary Celeste departed New York City, bound for Genoa, Italy. The ship was under the command of Captain Benjamin Briggs, who was accompanied by his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia. As far as they knew, the trip should have been a routine voyage. Then, on December 5th, another vessel called the De Gracia spotted the Mary Celeste drifting aimlessly in the Atlantic Ocean, about 400 miles east of the Azores. Perplexingly, the ship appeared perfectly intact, with all sails set and in good condition. The De Gracia slowly approached the Mary Celeste and, very cautiously, they boarded the ship. They immediately made a chilling discovery. The Mary Celeste was deserted. There was no visible sign of any struggle, but the lifeboat was missing. The cargo, including valuable trade goods, was still on board. Upon closer inspection, the mystery deepened. The ship's chronometer, which is a valuable navigational instrument, was missing, along with the captain's personal belongings. However, the crew's personal effects, including clothing and valuables, were left behind. Plus, the ship's logbook was only partially filled. Since the lifeboat was missing, it would be easy to just assume that the crew of the Mary Celeste were having some problems with the ship and were forced to abandon the vessel and sail to shore in the lifeboat. However, the crew of the De Gracia found the Mary Celeste to be in perfect working condition, with no obvious sign why its crew would abandon ship. So, what could have happened? Obviously, the disappearance of the crew is the heart of this mystery, as nobody would abandon a seaworthy vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean unless they absolutely had to. Theories of piracy, mutiny, and foul play were all investigated but failed to provide any conclusive answers. Plus, the possibility of encountering a sudden storm or otherwise unstable waters was also considered, but again, no evidence actually supported this theory. This incident was thoroughly investigated, and the surrounding waters repeatedly searched, but the fate of Captain Benjamin Briggs, his family, and the rest of the crew remains unknown. No bodies or life rafts were ever found. Still, the absence of the crew is unsettling, to say the least, and it raises haunting questions about what could have possibly compelled them to abandon a perfectly functional ship in the middle of the ocean. Whatever it was, it must have been scarier or more dangerous than setting off into the open ocean with a tiny, unstable life raft. As a result, some have proposed paranormal or supernatural explanations, with others even suggesting the involvement of sea monsters or extraterrestrial encounters. Unfortunately, due to the lack of any physical evidence whatsoever, we'll probably never know what truly happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste. In December of 1945, a group of 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers, collectively known as Flight 19, set off for a routine training mission from a naval air station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Little did they know that this would mark the beginning of one of the most enduring aviation mysteries of all time. The flight was led by experienced flight instructor Lieutenant Charles Taylor and consisted of 14 crew members across the 5 planes. Their mission was to navigate over the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, conduct their training exercises, and then return to the base. However, as twilight descended upon the horizon, something inexplicable began to unfold. Shortly into their flight, radio transmissions from Flight 19 became increasingly frantic and confused. Lieutenant Taylor, who was known for his expertise and level-headedness, reported that their compass was malfunctioning so the crew couldn't accurately determine their location. As the sun set over the vast expanse of water, the looming darkness compounded their inability to determine their heading and location. Gradually, Lieutenant Taylor's radio communications became increasingly erratic, as his strange and garbled messages revealed the crew's desperation to get back on course. Eventually, the flight crew had to accept that they truly had no idea which direction would take them back to land. "Everything looks strange," Taylor said over the radio. were lost. It was as if Flight 19 had stumbled into some kind of unfathomable labyrinth in which reality was distorted and the rules of navigation no longer applied. Despite repeated attempts by ground control to guide Flight 19 back to safety, the transmissions grew progressively weaker. One final haunting message cut through the radio static, Lieutenant Taylor exclaiming, "We can't find West. Everything is wrong. We don't know which way is west. Everything is..." Then, silence. As it became obvious to those on the ground that Flight 19 was lost, aircraft and ships in the area were alerted to begin a search and rescue effort. A U.S. Navy squadron at a nearby air station took off at 7:27 p.m. to aid in the search. 3 minutes later, at 7:30 p.m., they called in a routine radio message. After this message was received, this Navy squadron was never heard from again. What are the chances that both Flight 19 and this Navy squadron both go missing at the same time, in the same location, and no trace of either group is ever found? It could simply be a statistical anomaly. However, some might argue that it isn't a coincidence. One aspect of this case that continues to baffle researchers is the sudden and simultaneous failure of the compasses in all 5 aircraft in Flight 19. How could a group of experienced pilots, operating in ideal weather conditions, lose their sense of direction so dramatically? What could have possibly led them astray so severely? And did the search and rescue squadron that went missing also experience the same thing? After Flight 19 and the search and rescue Navy squadron both went missing, a massive search and rescue operation took place. The Navy, Coast Guard, and a large group of civilian vessels and aircraft all scoured a vast area of the Atlantic Ocean off Florida's eastern coast, where the planes were last known to be. They searched thoroughly and used a variety of assets and techniques with the hope of at least finding a trace of wreckage. Then the search expanded to encompass larger portions of the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. The search involved planes, helicopters, surface vessels, and even submarines. Unfortunately, they had no luck, and the fate of Flight 19 and the missing Navy squadron remains a mystery. In 1918, during the height of World War I, a massive naval vessel known as USS Cyclops set sail on a routine mission that would ultimately plunge it into the depths of one of the most enduring maritime mysteries of all time. More than a century later, the mystery of the USS Cyclops remains the greatest non-combat loss of life the US Navy has ever experienced. Measuring a massive 500 feet long and weighing over 19,000 tons, the USS Cyclops was a coal-carrying vessel under the command of Captain George W. Worley. Their task was to transport valuable manganese ore from Brazil to Baltimore, Maryland, providing critical supplies for the war effort. However, the USS Cyclops never reached its destination. The ship, along with its 309 crew members, disappeared without a trace somewhere in the treacherous waters of the Bermuda Triangle, baffling researchers and fueling countless theories about its fate. One of the most perplexing aspects of this mystery is the complete absence of wreckage. The ocean is, of course, a big place, so there's no guarantee that any wreckage will be found when a ship goes down, assuming that's what happened here. But still, this was a massive ship, and the search efforts were extensive. It's as if the ship vanished into thin air, leaving no tangible evidence behind. This total lack of evidence has fueled speculation about the involvement of supernatural forces, aliens, or even the existence of a portal to another dimension within the Bermuda Triangle. Another baffling aspect of this case is the total lack of any distress signals from the ship or any other prior indication of trouble. It's like the ship simply ceased to exist, slipping silently into the unknown. Numerous theories have emerged over the years to explain this mystery. One theory I've seen online is the possibility of magnetic anomalies within the Bermuda Triangle that could have interfered with the ship's navigational systems, causing it to veer off course, potentially disorienting the crew. If this did happen, it makes me wonder if those magnetic anomalies could have potentially hindered the sending of any distress signals as well. Others speculate that underwater phenomena like rogue waves or strong currents could have literally swallowed the ship whole, pulling the unsuspecting crew underwater in a very short period of time. That would certainly be a horrifying way to go. I've even read that the ship could have encountered some undiscovered trenches that could have trapped the ship, which would potentially explain the total lack of wreckage. As is often the case with baffling mysteries like these, much of the speculation online is within the realm of the supernatural. Such theories range from UFOs or underwater UFO bases to claims of time warps and interdimensional gateways within the Bermuda Triangle. Unfortunately, there is simply no evidence one way or the other, despite decades of investigation. Cases like these really do tend to remind me of the vast unknown that lies beneath the surface of the sea, as countless lost shipwrecks and dark undiscovered mysteries litter the ocean floor. This final mystery is often described as a modern version of the Mary Celeste incident. In 2007, a small yacht named Kaz II set sail from Arley Beach in Queensland, Australia, for what was supposed to be a routine sailing trip along the Great Barrier Reef. However, the events that transpired during its voyage remain unknown. Kaz II was a 9.8-meter catamaran owned by 3 friends, Peter Tunstead, James Tunstead, and Derek Batten. The vessel was well equipped and had been sailed extensively in the past. This time, though, it never reached its intended destination. Days after Kaz II set sail, a helicopter pilot noticed the yacht drifting aimlessly off the coast of Australia. The boat appeared to be deserted, with its sails set, engines running, and navigational lights on. Concerned, the pilot reported what he saw, and authorities then dispatched a search and rescue team to investigate the situation. Upon boarding the yacht, rescuers were met with an unsettling sight. The crew were nowhere to be found, but a small Yorkshire Terrier belonging to one of the 3 friends was still on board. The boat itself showed no signs of foul play, and various personal belongings, including wallets and IDs, were left untouched. Much like the Mary Celeste, the mysterious aspect of this case lies in the total absence of any clear explanation of what happened to the crew. For some reason, no distress signals were ever sent. One could reasonably conclude that the crew was not intending to abandon ship, as the yacht's sails were unfurled and the engines were left running. This might suggest that something unexpected and very sudden happened to the 3 friends while they were out on the water. As is often the case in strange cases like these, numerous theories have been proposed to explain the baffling disappearance of the crew. There are some fairly mundane possibilities. For instance, some have suggested that the 3 men could have fallen overboard while trying to retrieve a fishing net from the water. However, this is purely speculation, as there was no evidence whatsoever that would indicate this is true. Plus, while I could easily imagine one person falling overboard, then being swept up in the waves and eventually drowning, the idea that this could happen to all 3 men at once seems a little unlikely, at least to me. Others have proposed the possibility of a freak weather event or sudden surge of unstable waters that may have thrown the crew off balance, eventually falling into the water and drowning. However, weather reports at the time indicated relatively calm conditions, making this theory totally unconvincing. Similar to the Mary Celeste case, many can't resist proposing otherworldly or supernatural explanations to explain this bewildering mystery. The total lack of evidence to rely on here does make it easy for the imagination to run wild as to the fate of these 3 men. Is it really possible that they encountered some sort of otherworldly phenomenon that led to their demise? While these theories are certainly fun to consider, ultimately, they are pretty unlikely, at least in my opinion. And this is one of the most frustrating aspects of cases like this, the utter lack of any concrete information to go on. You'd think, or at least hope, for some shred of evidence, some minor clue that we can use to probe further and come up with a likely theory to explain what happened to these 3 people. But unfortunately, to this day, the fate of Peter Tunstead, James Tunstead, and Derek Batten remain unknown. The unanswered questions surrounding this mystery remain a haunting reminder of the vast nothingness that is the surface of our oceans. If anything happens, even something that would be relatively minor on land, it can quickly become a fatal emergency, and with nobody else around for countless miles, you never know when you'll end up falling headfirst into another unsolved mystery. Well, those are today's Unsolved Mysteries of the Deep Sea. I hope you enjoyed them. There were a few more mysteries I wanted to include in this video, such as the mystery of the disappearing islands, like the island of Bermeja in the Gulf of Mexico, but I'll save those for part 2. Also, I've been doing some reading on various creepy urban legends from around the world, and some of them are pretty insane, so I'm considering making that the topic of my next upload. Leave a comment if that sounds like something you'd like to watch. Regardless, if you enjoyed this video, please do like it and subscribe to my channel for more dark and mysterious content. Anyway, thanks for watching.